Hey everyone, and welcome to This Simpsons Sucks. And this idea I've wanted to do for a while, but because Fox has basically said they're not going to put out any more Simpsons DVDs, it means that I can't do it, essentially in the way I wanted to do it, which would be to get the DVDs, to go over the episodes and make fun of them as I normally would. So I decided to do it in a different way. I'm going to record as many Simpsons episodes as I can, and every time I record them, I'm going to sit down like this, I'm going to go through them, I'm gonna watch them, and I'm gonna just make fun of them and just basically try and state what's wrong in a way, because I really love The Simpsons, and every once in a blue moon they have a really good episode, but most of the time at the moment they've been pretty terrible, and that drives me mental because it's The Simpsons. It's classic. It was a good chunk of my childhood. It's what got me into wanting to do animation as a writing thing because I can't draw to save my life. So this is probably going to end up getting cut down because I have rambled. Me. But I've got a Simpsons episode lined up. I'm going to watch it. So I'll see you in about 20 minutes. So, that was an episode. So the episode I watched was Days of Future Future, which is season 25's episode 19. Why is it such a sad episode? There's no joy to the episode that much. It's just a very consistently sort of like melancholy story, which just seems bizarre to me. Now, the episode starts off with Homer dying because, okay, and then basically learning, he's Professor Frink has cloned him and can make duplicates of him. Which, okay, fine. Which then leads to a montage of Homer dying. Not sure how that's actually funny. I get how that's meant to be funny, but it's just, after a while, that joke just wears. It just wears thin. And then eventually we end up 30 years into the future, and he has died, and this time not able to come back, so he just turns into a computer program. Here's the problem with that straight away. That has nothing to do with the rest of the episode. And that's something that's bugged me for a while with some episodes, that there seems to be a thing of the opening bit to get into the rest of the episode doesn't come back. There isn't something to connect up those two sections. So instead of it flowing naturally, you actually have this moment where you could go, well, we could cut the entire beginning section and it doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect the overall plot. It doesn't affect the story of the episode. And that's something that bugs me, because you could go back, like if you go watch the old episodes of The Simpsons, they had a preamble sort of thing, a story of some form, and that would then lead into everything else. I'm trying to legitimately think of one specifically. The one that comes to mind is when Homer tries to basically become the new Santa, essentially. He becomes the nicest man in Springfield around Christmas. I can't remember what the episode's called, but it's the one with the astrolabe, the one where he buys that very expensive present for himself and just buys key rings for everybody else. And that has, the beginning of that episode, they get the bonus, and thus they go out, they buy that present, and that present is then what kicks off the rest of the episode. That is a naturally flowing narrative. Here, what's the point in having Homer dying countless times to then just go, now we're 30 years to the future, and now we're going to have this plot that doesn't connect up with the beginning. We have the same old plot, because God forbid that we do a future plot storyline and not just trudge over the same old tropes, because once again, Homer and Marge break up. Is that a surprise to anybody anymore? I've got to admit, yes, after 25 seasons, 25 seasons, they've broken up probably twice a season by this point. They even make a joke about it in the episode that Marge says that the fact they've broken up like 170 times. And it's just like, you are aware of that. You are self-aware enough that you know that that's what you've done. So why are you still doing the same plotline? Because it's nothing new. At the end of the episode, they get back together. Actually, at the end of the episode, nothing has changed because all the things that happened in the thing were a dream. the interesting thing actually with this episode is the fact that it's a continuation of the other future episodes they've done, not the Lisa's the president and all that. That episode is self-contained, or the original episode where they did this, which is actually still a very good episode. This episode just isn't in that same regard. It's this future episode where, and this is once again gets back to the whole, it's just sad, where it's just Bart is living in what was now sort of like, basically Springfield Elementary is turned into an apartment building for some reason. Apparently they don't need schools anymore. I think they're trying to be funny. It's kind of funny. It is kind of funny actually, I think about it sort of symbolically. Bart's living there after being divorced from this woman who was introduced in an earlier future version, which was when they were younger, which is interesting never brought up. But there must be like it's got to be a good sort of 10, 20 years at least. Maybe certainly around that period of time. And since then, basically, Bart has been married to this woman and is then divorced, and he has fathered 2 children with this woman. And so it's just that. And it's just this entire episode of... It's basically how Bart got his groove back. That's the episode. That's what it becomes. And it's just... I don't want to watch a 40-year-old Bart at this point moping around for most of an episode because it's not funny. It's just going, great. So this character who was so happy and vibrant is now a moderately depressed adult who may be one bad day from hanging himself. Just, nothing is funny about that. And then you've got there's an odd B plot. There's a B and a C plot. This is how poor the A plot is. They need 2 separate plots to try and pretend like they've got an episode. The B plot has Lisa is married to Milhouse. That immediately strikes me as strange, because Lisa cannot fucking stand Milhouse. And I don't know why they've paired them together. I actually think it would be funnier in a way, and more interesting, if it was Lisa and Nelson, because they did have that episode, and they had that whole thing of Nelson and Lisa do have this sort of relationship, and it's very opposite to Drax sort of situation, where the fact that they've put her with Milhouse feels like they've basically gone, oh, Lisa can't do any better than him. And Milhouse as a character doesn't change within 30 years. He doesn't become any better. He's basically the same character, but now looks like Kirk. He has become his father. And that just doesn't work. It doesn't work to me on that level. And apparently, at least according to this episode, Lisa is a necrophiliac. I'm not kidding. Because apparently, in this world, because, once again, we have just, mishmash of ideas, smorgasbord of ideas. Apparently in this world, zombies exist, and zombieism is a disease, it's a little thing. And so, Milhouse ends up getting bitten by a zombie, and then contracts zombieism, and spends the rest of the episode as a zombie. This apparently turns Lisa on. I kind of get the joke, but it's kind of creepy as well, because it's necrophilia at that point, because he's dead. They do reference the fact that he essentially isn't human and doesn't need to breathe at one point. Whereas the C plot is just Homer and Marge just, don't have a relationship. That's about it. That's it. There's so little done with that plot line, actually. And that is actually the one balance I'll give to this episode. They don't do the sort of like, oh, they're trying to get back together. It is Bart who tries to facilitate it, and it does work to the beginning. But then by the end, it's just like, oh yeah, they're back together. And they're back together because basically a good chunk of this episode, a good like 10 minutes, is a dream sequence. It's a dream sequence a la Total Recall, where, oh, he's had all these memories, he's having these memories put in, and this has allowed him to feel better about himself. And it's like, well, why? Why do we care? The issue with the future episodes, this is the problem, is that you're trying to play off a narrative that it's not been built. We don't care. We go, oh, Bart's this 40-year-old. He's divorced. He has 2 kids. we don't care. We've never seen how any of that happens. We've seen how he gets together with Gender when he's younger. Okay. But every time we've seen anything past that, it's always been that he's had 2 kids and he's been divorced. And that's it. And because we don't know anything about Gender, we don't know anything about the relationship, there's nothing to build on there. I don't feel for Bart at the end of the episode and say, oh, it's great that he's been able to move on, because there's nothing there to move on for the audience. So I don't understand what's the point of that. The future episodes I always liked. I usually always like the early ones especially, because they're interesting. Because it's basically the writers going, oh, well, what if this? And what if this? The future episode now, this one especially, doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like a what if this. It just feels like we go, oh, well, let's move them forward 30 years. That'll give us a few things we can do differently, which they don't do much with. They don't make it very interesting. And it's unfortunate for them in that regard, that it's just like, it's so bland as an episode. There are some good jokes, some good side gags that I actually really did enjoy. One of my actual favourite joke is you see Dolph, Kearney, and Jimbo try to mug Lisa and Milhouse after Milhouse turned into a zombie. And so they try to... Milhouse gets stabbed. He gets stabbed with a lightsaber knife. Knife. And it just doesn't affect him at all, because he's a zombie. Once again, he is dead at this point. And Ralph comes along, and Ralph is basically turned into Chief Wiggum. He is now a police officer, somehow. Nepotism, I think, at its finest there. And he comes along, and he's just like, what's going on here? And Milhouse picks him up, and just batters all 3 of them with Ralph. And it is just this great moment, because it's just like, yeah, that's fine. It's Milhouse not being Milhouse, which is actually much more interesting. And it works in that regard, and that's kind of funny, but there's not much to it. There's not many jokes out in there that really made me laugh. Like, I could go back and watch the early seasons of Simpsons, and those jokes will continuously make me laugh. It's the same with any good show, but you can just feel the heart of it's not in here. Another great sight gag in this, having dinner in a restaurant, it does this pan, and you see Martin and his urban muchacho, who, that is a callback to an episode. You see Maggie and Gerald. I like the fact that that's something that's there, but it's never really explained. It's just like, oh yeah, that just happens. But then one of the ones that they show is a much older Principal Skinner and his dead mother. And it's a great sight gag, and you just see it and just like, the fuck? Because she's obviously dead. She's obviously decayed. But it is very sort of psycho. It's that sort of moment. And I can imagine him going mental and killing people in a motel. Yeah, it's not good. But it's little bits like that. And that's what I mean. It's like, it gives them room to grow and do stuff like that. But this didn't feel like that episode. It felt like they just replaced Homer's standard role in the show with Bart. And then Lisa was the same thing. It felt, this is the problem. It was an episode with 3 separate plots, all doing exactly the same thing. Which is, oh, these relationships are in trouble. Right. Who cares? I don't care if Lisa dates Milhouse. It's not that interesting. I don't understand why they're together, when it shows quite obviously they have nothing in common. It seems truly like they only got married because they did, which is weird, actually, because it was referenced in a previous feature episode. And I know it seems weird to connect with the feature episodes, but the connecting feature episodes, where basically Milhouse starts, and I can't remember how long ago this is, it's a fair few seasons ago, where Bart sees that Lisa and Milhouse will end up getting together because Milhouse accidentally purposefully, I think it is, starts a fire and rescues Lisa, and Lisa then feels indebted to him, and thus then falls in love with him. And they show their relationship as being terrible, and thus Bart goes out and prevents it. So I don't know why the writers have then gone, oh yeah, this situation that we once said, would not work, we're going to do anyway, and it's not going to work. I don't understand the point of that. I don't think this is a very good episode. I would say it's not one of the worst episodes because the narrative's there. There's stuff they could do. There is certainly a story maybe to be better told about relationships and getting over them, which I feel like is something like the early Simpsons would have done much better, and this one just doesn't do because they don't focus on a plot line. They don't focus on this sort of emotional tangent that they really should try and grab a hold of. They just kind of go, oh, we'll throw in some jokes, and we'll throw in a lot of one-off jokes that won't come back, that won't have anything to do with anything, and they lose that connection. That's the heart of it. It's the heart of the Simpsons. I feel that they've lost. I've got 2 other episodes to go on these that I've recorded, one of which is far, far stupider. The other one is... the other one is an episode that's, once again, like, it could have been funny, it could have been interesting, but they don't do much with it, and I'll get to those shortly. But for now, I've been talking for 17 minutes, so yeah, it's about as long as I want to do. So Days of Future Future, which is what the episode was called, I just don't think it's that great. I think if they want to change stuff up, and they want to have the characters be older, do that. Perfectly fine. Do not let yourself, Simpsons, build up. Because you can't build up. You have lost that ability. And it doesn't work, because this is the thing I realised. I had to quickly go do something before I sat down to record this, and I realised if they wanted to tie in the beginning with the end, they wanted to tie in that opening gag of Homer dying over and over again and being cloned by Professor Frink, with it being with the rest of the episode, they could have had at the end of the episode Homer being revived for one more time and and saying, he's realised his mistakes. He knows what he wants to do. He wants to be with Marge. That's it. That was all he needed to do, because that's what the rest of the episode is. For some reason, instead, they then turn it's that Homer is now a really kind of terrifying version of C-3PO from Star Wars. That's it. And then this hybrid version of Santa's Little Helper and Snowball 2 speaks because it exists. Don't know why. Once again, they don't explain it. It's there for one scene saying, what is it? And then it goes away. Once again, kind of the whole thing of, hey, you've got a joke, why not, use it more than once instead of the other jokes you are using more than once, which aren't as funny. I realise I may have contradicted myself a little just then, but it's that difference between using a singular joke and using a singular joke once and going, hey, we've got this one joke, why not expand upon that idea? That would work. And I would like to know how Santa's Little Hybrid, as they refer to it, came to be. I would love to know that, because that's like, okay, I want to know what happened to Santa's Little Helper, how he got his head and face put onto Snowball's body, and now why he can speak. That would be funny. I feel like there's something that could be done there. If you can't do something with that, it's friggin' amazing. But that's the thing, it's just like, it ends the episode with Santa's Little Hybrid saying, it's like, oh, well, I was a dream too, right? Because that's the whole episode there. They go, oh no, you were real. And then Santa's Little Hybrid just goes, oh. And then the episode ends. Was that a joke? Was that a joke to finish the episode? This creature that we've never seen going, oh. There's an end of a Family Guy episode, which, if I do any scripted versions of this, I'm going to use. Because, good God, if it's not perfectly on point in this situation. With Meg making this joke, and it's not a good joke. It's a terribly flat joke. And Peter just says, oh, that's it. It's the good way to end it. Always keep them laughing. And then it just fades out, and it goes to the Simpsons end credits, but with the Family Guy writers instead. And that is kind of what it is with the Simpsons. There isn't a heartwarming moment. It isn't this funny joke. Literally, the end of the episode is perfectly summed up by one character going, oh, because that's what the audience did, I imagine, when they watched this episode and the episode ended. And they just went, oh, right. That apparently was an episode. I am happy that I'm doing this. I'm going to start doing this, talk about these episodes, because stuff like this is just either they need to get back to being like focused and able to talk about like have two plot lines, perfectly fine. Have an A plot, have a B plot, but have it be that there is some sort of focus. There was a lot of montaging in this episode that was really unnecessary. The first montage was Homer dying over and over again, and the second montage was Bart dating a lot of women and having sex with them. Okay, including Miss Hoover. Which is kind of weird because by that point she has to have been somewhere towards an octogenarian. And also they try to make like a sex joke and then they kind of divert. It's like they go, oh, we can't make this really dirty joke, abort and go to this other joke. And he says, oh, now I see why they call you Miss Hoover. And you kind of go for, so he's like, did the Simpsons just make a really dirty joke? You have that moment. You have that. It's like, did they say that really? And then Miss Hoover. Then it shows a wide shot, and it's Bart saying, "Oh, she obviously spent all day vacuuming." Let the dirty joke go through. There is no way that dirty joke couldn't have gotten through. It's not that dirty. You could have safely done that, and no one would have cared. Like the Animaniacs would have done that. Back in the 90s, the Animaniacs would have been all over that. And the Animaniacs had some very dirty jokes hidden in the scripts. And if you can make that one joke slip by the censors, which they did used to do as well, then that would be far better. I think I've talked about this episode long enough. I don't recommend this episode that much. I don't think it's a very good episode. I don't think it's a great representation of this. I know, however, I've got 2 more episodes, and one of which is far worse. And that's the one I'm going to watch next. So, see you on the next bit. Oh boy.